even when we are not still, not calm, when we're angry, when we're frustrated, that's still the three principles at work. We are still experiencing life through those three principles. That's what I was saying. And one of my teachers, who is my meditation teacher, said, your job is to experience life fully and completely.
You might be expecting this podcast to discuss hot baths, meditation techniques, and breathing exercises. But really, those are only just pressure releases, and they don't fix the true cause. The true issue is a contracted mind. And a contracted mind creates stress, upset, frustration, and impatience. A relaxed mind creates inspiration, connection, fresh ideas, and solutions to intractable problems. We're going to explore how you can relax into presence. This is the Releasing Mental Tension podcast with Rich Life. What if you could have access to more calmness and relaxation in more of your life? If you struggle with overthinking and being up in your head, then listen to this episode. I'm going to be talking with my guest, Jane Gray. She is a transformative coach and a meditation teacher. She primarily works with women and helps them with overthinking and mental tension. She shares an understanding that can help you relax more into wisdom. Who doesn't want a little bit more calmness? Like, sign me up. I would like.
We all need a bit more of that.
Yeah. Welcome, Jane. Thanks for joining me in this space.
Oh, thank you, Rich, and thank you for inviting me. It's lovely to be here.
Yeah. And we're going to be talking about an understanding of how the mind works that can help you have less mental tension. And so tell me more about how you have less mental tension in your life, Jane.
So shall I tell you a little bit about the mental tension that I used to have first?
Yes.
And then we'll talk about what that's like now and my journey to getting there. So as a teenager, I had a lot of mental tension. I had and still have a very active imagination, which is amazing. It's a real gift. However, when you're a teenager and there are things on the news that you don't quite understand, it can lead to a lot of mental tension. So at the time I was a teenager, which is a very long time ago, it was around the time of the Second Cold War. So there was a lot of talk about nuclear warfare. And there were TV programs that were quite disturbing, distressing, and all of that kind of stuff. So there was an element of fear around what would happen when this siren, if there was even a siren, was going to sound and I needed to get back home to be with my parents for the very last moments of my life, of the world. And on the back of that, I developed a fear of dying in my sleep. So there was all this stuff going on about, the fear of the world ending. But then when I went to bed on a night, I found myself writing notes to my mum and my dad and sisters. And obviously at the time I was doing that, there was a lot of emotion. And then in the morning when I woke up, of course, I would then destroy the note and off I would go about my day, not thinking about that again until the time it came to go to bed again. And then one day when I was writing my note, tear-stained ink on the page, I heard what I now refer to as my voice of wisdom. And that voice of wisdom said, "What makes you so special?" And in that moment, it kind of pulled me up short. And it just blew the thought out of my mind. And it wasn't that I was, it was a criticism or anything. It was just that it just blew the thought. And in that moment, I thought, actually, that's really interesting how when I'm in that thought process where I'm, in the midst of this fear, the feelings that come with that, and then when that thought isn't there, there's kind of a sense of peace. So I got curious about where that experience comes from in general. So fast forward to my 20s and 30s, I had what you would call symptoms of depression, anxiety, stress, lots of thinking about lots of things. And so much so that at night time, my mind would just, instead of switching off, it would just switch on when I went to bed. And it was just like so much noise in there. So I completely get the busy mind thing, going over past conversations, planning future conversations. Have you ever done that, Rich, where you think, oh, I'm going to have this conversation with a boss or somebody. Well, I'm going to say this, and then they're going to say this, and then I'm going to reply with this really smart reply that says this, this, and this. Anyway, so a lot of energy spent doing that. And then I came across, I've always been a spiritual seeker, but I came across the 3 principles understanding, and it just made so much sense to me. The simplicity of it was just a bit mind-blowing to me as well. And so now what I do is I help women who find themselves in that place where they feel at the mercy of their thinking. And together we kind of go on a journey to settle all of that. Just so that they get a different experience of life and a calmer experience of life and an understanding of what's actually going on for them, because it's not what they think. It's they're in the innocent misunderstanding, just like I had been. Yeah.
So it sounds like you've had a lot of overthinking. And yes, I have had like the chess conversations of if they say this, then I'm going to say this. Imaginary conversations, and then it never ends up going the way that you think it's going to go. Even if you plan it out meticulously, it's always different. And I think the reason is because the feeling is always different. You never know what feeling you're going to be in. We're very poor predictors of feeling.
Mm.
And then you had this experience where you had a thought that kind of silenced some of these other thoughts that were jumbled around in your head. And some person who would listen to that would say, that thought of why do you think you're so special, is that was the thought that you had?
What makes you so special? Yeah.
What makes you so special? Like, there's some people who would be like, that is not a good thought. Like that's a really negative thought, in fact. But for you, it sounds like it came from a deeper place.
It did. Yeah.
A more clear place. And then that is why it was able to give you this almost this respite for just a little bit, it seemed like.
Yeah. And I think just to sort of elaborate on that, what makes you so special, it wasn't an unkind thought. It wasn't a criticism. It was in that moment, there were so many things happened in the moment, but one of them was people die in all sorts of ways. And, what you could say, what makes me so special that I'm just going to float off and drift, fall asleep and not wake up again in my sleep. You could say, what makes me so special that I'm going to know the moment of my demise. But it was kind of a multi-level thing. But yeah, the crux of it was that it just completely pulled me out of that thought, feeling, imagined reality. Yeah.
Well, and two, because your ego brain or your intellectual brain was going over and over about, oh, this could happen, or this could happen, or I could fall asleep, or and never wake up. And then you had this thought of, it seems like maybe it was saying, everybody will pass away sometime, and all of this worrying about it, it's not giving you anything.
Mm.
It's not making you special in any way. We all get into our heads and we all worry about fearful things. I think that we all are afraid of dying because it's a very primitive response. It's like, our survival brain and our ego and intellectual brain was designed to keep us alive.
Mm.
So it kind of made sense that you had a lot of overthinking about that. But then that voice of wisdom said, you know what? It's not that big of a deal.
Mm. Yeah. And I've had lots of moments where I've heard the voice of wisdom since as well.
Mm.
I'm sure other people have a different terminology for it, but for me, that's what I call it. Yeah.
It speaks to us, but a lot of the times we're so in our heads that we can't hear it.
Mm.
And in that moment, it just came through, it sounds like.
Yeah.
And then in other moments now in your life, it comes through more.
It does. Um, I think when we become aware of how we work and how life works, there's just more stillness to allow for that to come through. There's more opportunity for it to show up. But I still have moments where it's a big message. It's always in the form of a question, always. And that's just the way that I work. Not everybody's the same, and this is the beauty of getting still, because we just get in touch with all the creativity and all the resilience and curiosity and wisdom and intuition that's part of who we are. And that comes in all different forms for everybody. So yeah, I would say stillness is definitely the biggest difference now. I've got so much more peace and stillness, even when things are on the outside are not still and peaceful. Yeah.
And I've had that similar experience too, where I was definitely overthinking things. I was trying to figure out how I could be happy, how I could be contented and really okay, how I could be okay. And I was making that a project. And I was doing yoga, meditation, qigong, breathwork, cold showers, affirmations, positive playlists. If I thought it might work, I would try it and make it a staple in what I do. And now I have more mental peace than when I was meditating 3 times a day.
Mm.
But the other thing is, it just doesn't bother me if I don't have mental peace too. Like that's the other piece of it, that everybody I think is like, well, I have to get mental peace. They listen to something like this and they might listen to a coach who says, well, find stillness. And they're like, oh, well, I've been trying. Like there's a new sense of freedom that you can find when not having stillness is not frightening. When you can be okay not being okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the big things that stood out for me was one of my teachers. So whilst I teach from a three principles understanding, I embrace all of the other modalities, interventions, whatever they are, that are out there because for a long time when I was learning the three principles, learning about the three principles, I kind of had this belief that I needed to leave all of that behind because everything was the three principles. And of course that's true. However, I've now come to a place where I see that, it's not a bad thing that somebody's out there doing meditation teaching or doing the Tai Chi and all of that stuff. Because, the three principles is about life and how we experience it. And so is that. It's an experience. The world's an exciting place to play. Um, and I've kind of lost my thread a little bit, but I think I was going down there. I've settled more into really seeing the principles at play in everything. And just as you said, Rich, even when we are not still, not calm, when we're angry, when we're frustrated, that's still the three principles at work. We are still experiencing life through those three principles. That's what I was saying. And one of my teachers, who was my meditation teacher, said, your job is to experience life fully and completely. And I love that because it means we don't have to. So like you said, you were looking for happiness. You were looking to be this idealistic version of Rich, that was going to be all zen and all wonderful and peace and all of that kind of stuff. Me too. Um, but that's not what being a human's all about. And one of the best moments that I can remember in recent history is, I won't go into all the story, but I was really angry with my husband. But in the moment that I was angry, it was a different kind of anger. I was angry about what had happened, and I was able to freely express my anger. It lasted for about 5 minutes. Then it was done. It was gone. There was no more thinking about the thing, the thing that had happened, what had gone on. I cleaned up the mess that I'd made as we were talking, as me and my husband were talking. I explained that I was angry about it, but I was okay now. It was fine. And I just went on and had a really lovely evening. Because I wasn't stuck in the place that I would have normally been stuck, which was, getting angry about something and then all of this thinking coming in about, oh, well, and there was this thing in the past as well, or, oh, well, that always happens to me. Whatever it is, it was just an in the moment experience of life. And, in a few moments, it had dissipated and gone, and it was. We laugh about it now, but yeah, it was a fabulous moment.
Well, that speaks to the fluidity of our experience. That we can get this experience that pops up, and when we think that it's a problem, when we think that it needs to be solved or it shouldn't be that way, then we're going to create a lot of spinning around it, and
Yeah.
and it's almost like we can just rev it up and create a lot of energy around it, and then we kind of get going, and then it's like the thing that originally set us off isn't really what we're focusing on anymore. Then we can focus on, like you said, well, you did this like 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
and I'm tired of this, and you haven't noticed that you've dropped in your level of consciousness.
Mm.
You haven't noticed that your mood has lowered. And when we aren't holding on to it, when we're not spinning, really it doesn't last very long. It's there and then it dissolves away. And I loved that you said, it's not even there. You said this earlier. It's not even there when it's gone.
Yeah, it's gone. And that's another beautiful thing about this understanding is that whatever the experience is, there are not many things that are certain in life, but the one thing I know is certain is that whatever the experience is going to move, it is going to shift. And it might take 5 minutes for it to shift. It might take 5 days, it might take 5 hours, it might take 5 weeks, but it's going to shift. And it's a real gift to be able to see that. And I don't always see it. But when I do, it's just I'm very grateful that I came across this understanding and that I learn from everybody, from you, from the whole 3P community, from other human beings about the nature of our experience. And what Sid Banks said about, you're only ever one thought away from that lovely, peaceful feeling. And that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, it's right there.
Yeah.
It's underneath the surface. You just sometimes blind yourself to it. We all do it. We all do it. Like you said, you do it, I do it. Doesn't matter if you have been around this understanding for 1 year or 20 years or 40 years, we're all still human.
Yeah.
And we're having this human experience of life. And these emotions come and they go, and it looks really real to us at times, and it looks not so real. It looks like we can see through it at other times. And the more that you are kind of grounded in realizing that it's just passing experience. It's not the end of the world, even though it might feel like it. And it won't stay forever, even though it might feel like it. Because those thoughts tend to say, oh, this is gonna stay forever, and this has been here forever, and we need to figure out a way out of it. And that's one of the best freedoms that I found, is that I don't have to figure my way out of it anymore. I used to try, and I thought that it was working, but I wasn't doing it. I was doing all of these things to try and control, but when I felt good, it was because of the 3 principles in action.
Yeah.
When I felt not so good, when I felt low, it was because of how I was using those same 3 principles. I just didn't know that. And I thought that it was my responsibility.
Yeah.
I thought it was on me. And to let that not be the case, to let it just give it away and just say, here, you can take care of it. I know that eventually I'll feel better. I know that I have wellness within me.
Yeah. And I loved what you said earlier about your level of consciousness. And I love what Michael Neal says about the glass elevator. And how, when you're on the ground floor, it's very noisy, very busy, it's crowded, can't see very clearly. But as the elevator rises, as your consciousness level of consciousness goes up, or your mood lifts, or whatever it is, then there's just a bit of breathing space, a bit more clarity about things. And of course, we're up and down in that elevator all day long. So yeah, that really resonated with me as well.
Tell us more about that metaphor for those people who aren't
Sure.
familiar with it. Explain it a little bit more.
Yeah, so Sid Banks, who articulated the three principles, talked about infinite levels of consciousness. And Michael Neal, who's a three principles teacher, he talks about that being like a glass elevator on the outside of a building. And you get in at the ground floor, and there's lots of people around on the street outside, and it's all noisy, the cars honking their horns, there's smoke everywhere. It's difficult to have a feeling of space or calmness there. As you rise, as your level of consciousness rises, as the elevator goes up, then it's that noise and franticness is no longer there. There begins to be a little bit of space to breathe. It's like, oh, that's nice. And then the elevator goes up a bit more and up a bit more until you're at a place where actually the things down there on the ground are like tiny. And there's just this wonderful sense of expansiveness and space to think and calmness. And, that's the way I kind of interpret Michael Neal's metaphor. But I also like to think that, just like you touched on, Rich, it's like, we don't have to do anything. So we're not selecting the floor that we're on. That is just happening. The elevator will go up. And it keeps on going up until it comes back down again. So it's yeah, I just love that, because for me that visual of the elevator rising and just getting that sense of how you're leaving all of that clatter and commotion. You're just leaving that. It's still there, but you're just leaving it and lifting and rising and breathing. Yeah, and just being.
Well, I also like that you kind of mentioned that it's such a perspective change, like where your problems look so real and big when you're down low, and then as you get higher and higher, they look so small. They look just tiny. And
Yeah.
that's one of the ways that we can release mental tension, is when we let our consciousness rise, then we can see even the most intractable problems, even the biggest problems of our entire life that we've never found an answer to, that we think we need an answer to, they just become like this.
Yeah.
And one of the ways that we do that is we have to resist the urge to camp out in the lower levels.
Yeah.
It looks like, okay, well, I just live here now. And like George Pransky talks about how, some people go in and try and renovate the low levels, but it's so fluid. We're always moving up and down. We don't have to fix ourselves, and we don't have to fix the level that we're on.
Yeah.
And you're kind of nodding a little bit. What are you seeing in that?
I'm just loving hanging out in the elevator. Yeah. It's and it's that reminder as well about not needing to fix the level that we're at. It's not needing to fix what we're experiencing. There's nothing to fix. There is nothing to fix.
So you're saying that we can't, even if we want to. Because what we're trying to fix is a thought. It's not a real thing. It's something that's that comes and goes. It's something that's transitive, and it transforms constantly and comes and then just relaxes back into the energy from which it came. So it's like trying to
plait fog, as we say in Yorkshire.
What is the saying?
It's like trying to plait fog. So, you know, like hair plaits that women have?
Mm-hmm.
The fog, you know, the mist,
Yeah,
foggy,
yeah,
like trying to plait fog. It's impossible.
yeah.
It's a very Yorkshire saying, is that?
I love it. Well, we need to adopt it. It's trying to,
Yeah.
yeah, you can't fix something or change something that is so insubstantial. And you can try. You're welcome to try. Like, you have free will. You have the unlimited freedom to try and fix the thoughts and the problems that you have. And all problems are thought problems. And so when we try and go in to fix them, it looks very real, and it feels very real. And we will get more and more into the realness of it. It's almost like it becomes more and more solid the more energy we give it in our minds. And then, yeah, of course, you can run in your face into it. Like it becomes a brick wall, a little mental brick wall that you can slam into. But it's thought. So even though it feels like you're slamming into the brick wall, you get distracted by something else, your dogs or your kid or your spouse, and it's gone.
Yeah. I did clarity coach training with Jamie Smart. And if anybody's ever come across Jamie, he's got a little bit of a catchphrase. And that is, you are only ever experiencing the principle of thought taking form in the moment. And I heard him say this so many times. I watched a lot of videos. I went on his training. He said it at least once a day when we were on the training. And I could catch the truth in it. It was like, oh, I know that's true, but it was like I just didn't understand what that was. And for me, I'd been so entrenched in the thought-feeling connection that I just kept going back to the I am only ever feeling my thinking kind of thing. Which, of course, we do. We do feel our thinking. But when I actually saw it one day, when I actually saw that whilst, yes, we have that experience of the thought-feeling connection, what's actually going on is that there is this principle of thought that delivers something to us and it manifests itself into form in the moment. And once I could see there was something before this, it made such a difference to me. Yeah. It's not fixable. It doesn't need fixing. It just is this way that we are created and the way that life works that delivers us delivers our experience to us moment to moment to moment to moment.
And what was the quote again?
The quote is, you are only ever experiencing the principle of thought, with a capital T, taking form in the moment.
And so it sounds like you've heard that over and over and over.
Over and over and over and over.
But then you saw it in a new way one day, maybe saw it from a deeper space, from a space of wisdom or something like that. And Do you think that you can put a little bit of words to what that means?
Let me think if I can. It's
I know.
always tricky when we get to this level because it's
Yes.
like it's trying to articulate something that's and it gets a bit clunky and a bit clumsy. But how it used to be for me was the what I was feeling, I would associate with what I was thinking. I would say that my feelings were valid, my feelings mattered, all of that kind of stuff. And we hear a lot of that around us. I hear a lot of people say that, and we're human beings, and people are making of that what they will. But it seemed to be a big thing because if I didn't like the feeling that was then associated with a thought, then I lapsed into the fixing mode. It's like, well, I'm going to have to do something to shift this because I'm not having a great time at this moment in time. So even when I started learning the principles, even though I could see a bit of what was being explained, it was when that really hit that I didn't get quite so hung up on how I was feeling. In fact, I don't think on a daily basis I pay very much attention to how I'm feeling at the moment. These days, at one time it was like, oh, how am I feeling? How am I feeling? Checking, how am I feeling? Oh no, not that feeling again, that kind of thing. But these days, it's just like, oh, well, I'm feeling.
Mm.
That's kind of normal. So it's almost like rather than it being this thing here that appears very real and very solid and something that we either like the feeling or we don't. If we don't like it, then we want to do something about it. It's more a case of realizing that in any moment, something else is going to be delivered to me. Because unless I just stay in one place, giving energy to this thing, speeding everything, revving up my thoughts, doing all of that stuff, which sometimes I do. But if I go about my life, if I, you know, speak to people, live my life, do whatever, something else in the very next second is going to pop in. So it's not this that's important. It's the fact that it's going to change. And I don't know what's going to come in.
Isn't that interesting and exciting?
It is. When I saw it, it was like, oh my God. Got on the computer, went into the Facebook group, Jamie, this is what I've just seen. So yeah.
Because the cool thing about it is then you can have this curiosity of what's going to come next. It's like you can have this experience of life, but know that with this curious spirit that something new and fresh will come in the next moment. And it could be anything. And it could
Yeah.
be a similar experience. It could be a completely new experience. And I think that's what I want people to start to see is that they can kind of create a story of how, oh, this experience is consistent.
Yeah.
It's always the same. It's kind of like that's always my go-to, or but there are just so many different slight variations that you're missing out on, first of all, and that it is always changing, and you're missing out on that as well. And the other thing that was maybe I heard in this based off of your explanation, and you can tell me if I'm off, but that before you saw that there were, two sides of a coin, there was emotions and then there was thoughts. And so they were two separate things in your mind. And it was a little bit more complicated. And then you saw it a little bit more simply, that it is one experience that comes in. It's showing up in different ways. It's showing up in my mind as thought, showing up in my body as emotion, but it's one energy coming through. Do you feel like that's a little bit of what you saw?
Yeah, and I've never thought of it like that, but yeah, that's a beautiful way of putting it, and it, an accurate way as well. Yeah, I love that.
And that's your insight. That's your seeing it more simply. And we as coaches, we can't give that to people.
No, that's exciting too.
Say more.
Well, one of the things I love about being in a coaching conversation is, again, I never know what's going to come up. And then there's obviously something going on, as we're in a conversation, and, that magical insight takes place. And it always blows my mind, because it's not like we go into coaching conversations saying, right, this person needs to have this insight and then they'll be okay. I mean, we know they're okay anyway, but it's like, no. And sometimes I've had conversations with people and they say things like, when you said blah, 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 and I know I haven't said that. But they've heard something. They've either heard the words in a different order, but they've heard something different to what I was actually speaking. And they've had their own insight from that, which is it's just amazing. And it's such a privilege to do this work with people, to be able to sit knowing that they've got everything they need, to sit knowing that they have the capacity for insight. And then witness it when it comes in. And of course, it doesn't always happen in a session. It sometimes happens while they're in the shower when they've gone home or whatever. But yeah, it's I love that we can't do this for people, because there's so much power in seeing this for yourself. Yeah.
And two, it's exploring this, because you can hear it in a coaching session, and that's very powerful. You can hear it in a book. You can hear it in a video and maybe even a podcast session. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
Oh my! And even like Sid would say, you can hear it. You can hear wisdom in line for the supermarket.
Yeah.
It's all around you, and so it's opening yourself up to it in a little bit of I don't even know if that turn of phrase accurately describes what you're doing, but it isn't creating an opening for it. It is letting there be a little bit of expansiveness and looking towards that. Well, let's pretend that there's somebody who's listening and they are in their heads more often than not. They are tired of being in their own head. And they would say, hey, well, what can I do next? Like, what am I supposed to do to help this? It seems like, Jane, you've done a wonderful job, and good for you. Like, you have found a little bit of peace in your life. How can I find my peace? What would you say to them?
The first thing I would say is that they don't need to find it, because it's already there. Whilst it feels like it's not, the only thing that's getting in the way is what's going on in here. And not just what's going on in here, but your misunderstanding about what this is. And so I would invite them to get curious about what that is, to be open to there being a different way without it being hard work. And to go and listen to Sid.
Remind us who Sid is again.
So Sydney Banks is the guy who articulated the 3 principles. And he was an ordinary guy who had an enlightenment experience. And there are videos online that you can watch. And basically it's Sid speaking wisdom. It's just listening to wisdom. And it's a beautiful place to start this exploration. Not listening from I need to get rid of this thinking kind of thing. Sid, fix me, fix me, fix me. Just a place to sit and luxuriate in the words and let the words wash over you and look for that lovely, peaceful feeling and explore what's going on there. And then let wisdom guide you as to what to do next.
And what I often encourage people to do, because sometimes when you start listening to Sid, at least this was my experience, it sounds almost like a foreign language. You're like, what is he talking about? I have no idea what's going on. And so you can listen to it and you can kind of have that experience of it. And then also things like meeting with a coach, things like reading a book. Then you go back to listen to Sydney Banks speak. And it's almost like you've translated a word or two there.
Mm.
And then you're hearing deeper and deeper. Yeah. Well, I encourage people to reach out to you, Jane, if they heard something that was transformative and helps them to have a more calm mind. Where can people reach out to you and find you?
So the best place to find me is on Facebook, either under my name, Jane Gray, or my business page, This Lighthearted Life. And I also have a group, a Facebook group under the same name. But yeah, there's plenty there on my profile and in my groups. And I would love to hear if anybody's had an insight or if anything resonates. I would love to hear. So please feel free to send me a message, or Rich, and he can pass it on to me, to say what you've heard from the conversation. It's been lovely.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I don't think I'm in your Facebook group, so I'm going to have to join.
Oh, it's for women only, Rich. I'm really sorry.
Oh, okay.
It's because it's part of my coaching thing. It's just like,
I got you.
Sorry.
No,
but I'd love to have you in there.
It's all right. I'm like, well, hey, come on.
You're missing something. Yeah.
And then, okay. Yeah, I'm totally fine. I'll have a little bit of FOMO, but I'm sure it's a wonderful space. So if you would like to join that would be a really great resource.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Jane, so much for coming on to the Releasing Mental Tension podcast. And we so appreciate your time, your wisdom, and your presence. And have a wonderful day.
Thank you for asking me, Rich. It's been lovely.
This is the Releasing Mental Tension podcast with Rich Life. I'm on a mission to help people release their mental tension because I know that it helps them to be more capable, creative, and compassionate human beings. And I need your help. Please like, comment, subscribe. If you'd like more resources, visit richliferealization.com. Your vibrant life is a single thought away.